He called the district saying it looks like there's going to be trouble. I was one of those officers dispatched to help.
50 years after the Polish Hall massacre, the outlaw brotherhood, known as the Hells Angels, had found a new battleground, the Arizona border. But this time, they weren't fighting rival bikers. They were staring down an army, and they didn't lose. The locals would later call it the borderline blood pact. The Arizona desert has always been more than just sand and sky. It's a lawless corridor, a 1,000-mile graveyard where ghosts of smugglers and gun runners still whisper through the wind. For decades, it was a quiet crossing ground, until the roar of engines broke the silence. From the north came the Angels, chrome, leather, and vengeance. From the south came an organized force, armed and ruthless, a cartel known for turning the desert into a kingdom of blood. Somewhere in that wasteland, fate forced two worlds to collide. And before dawn, over 300 men would never leave that sand alive. But to understand how it happened, and why a biker brotherhood would face a cartel head-on, we have to go back to where their code was born, Cleveland, 1974. The footage is grainy, a clip from Secrets of the Hells Angels. A simple bike show turned bloodbath. Outnumbered 8-1, 32 Angels walked into what police called the deadliest biker brawl in U.S. history, and somehow walked out alive. That night became legend, and it also became training. They learned that victory belonged to those who struck first, moved fast, and disappeared faster. It was by 2023, the Sinaloa cartel had successfully seized control of critical smuggling corridors along Arizona's western edge, spanning from Lukeville to San Luis Rio, Colorado, an area traffickers call the Sonoran Gate. U.S. Customs and Border Protection documented an unprecedented explosion in illegal crossings through this zone. These weren't desperate migrants looking for work. These were tactical military convoys of heavily armed traffickers using the harsh desert as perfect cover. Federal intelligence reports quietly noted that a mysterious motorcycle organization had begun patrolling sections of privately owned ranch property near Ajo, Arizona. Initially, law enforcement assumed these riders were just local militia groups playing weekend warrior. But intercepted radio communications revealed something far more disturbing. These riders were organized, disciplined, and using identical call signs previously associated with the Hells Angels Nomads chapter operating out of California. The Angels had personal reasons for rage. They'd lost brothers to fentanyl, not in violent turf wars, but through accidental overdoses. Their sacred creed, forever forward, had twisted into something darker and more vengeful. The cartel's poison was systematically killing Americans, and that violation demanded blood. A Pima County Sheriff's Department report documented a suspicious pattern of violent confrontations along State Route 85. Burned vehicles littered the roadside. Spent casings from 7.62 NATO rounds covered the asphalt. Tire tracks led north toward a known biker gathering spot near Arizona. Law enforcement sources quoted in the Arizona Republic observed unmarked Harley groups escorting civilian trucks through desert trails in tight military formation, behavior consistent with professional tactical convoys. Still, nobody seriously believed they would actually engage a cartel directly. The night hell came to the desert. The night everything changed started quietly enough. During the early morning hours of March 17, 2024, a caravan of 12 trucks, later confirmed as belonging to Sinaloa's Los Ninis Enforcement Division, crossed through an unofficial gap outside Organ Pipe Cactus National Monument. Their cargo included weaponry typically reserved for active war zones. Belt-fed M249 machine guns, rocket-propelled grenades, night vision-equipped drones. The convoy's target was a safe house near Gadsden, believed to contain massive narcotic storage tanks destined for Phoenix distribution networks. What they couldn't have known, or simply refused to believe, was that the Hells Angels already controlled the northern escape route. An unnamed federal agent quoted by Reuters characterized the encounter as the first documented instance of full-scale tactical warfare between an American motorcycle organization and a Mexican drug cartel. According to CBP's classified post-incident analysis, the Angels had infiltrated the region days before the ambush. Using ancient tactical knowledge refined during the brutal 1970s biker wars, they buried weapons caches near natural defensive positions, a strategy ripped directly from their Polish Hall playbook. They moved like shadows through the desert, communicating exclusively via encrypted shortwave radios. The angel allegedly commanding the Arizona operation was Rex Menendez, a Marine Corps combat veteran previously expelled from the club for unauthorized violent actions, but quietly reinstated under the banner of mutual cause. Menendez had earned a reputation for two distinct characteristics: military battlefield discipline and an absolutely unrelenting hatred for drug cartels. At precisely 1:14 a.m., the convoy entered the kill zone. Thermal imaging cameras captured muzzle flashes so intensely bright they triggered satellite detection alerts from U.S. military orbital surveillance systems, initially misidentified as atmospheric lightning strikes. What erupted next was a 43-minute sustained firefight spanning 2.7 miles of brutal desert terrain. One eyewitness, a Border Patrol ranger positioned 11 miles north, later described hearing constant automatic weapons fire that sounded exactly like Fallujah. The engagement, according to Vice News investigation, involved approximately 40 Angels against over 200 cartel enforcers. The Angels exploited natural dune trails to execute flanking maneuvers, striking simultaneously from north and west with semi-automatic rifles and improvised explosive devices. Subsequent audio analysis confirmed they were employing NATO standard hand signals and staggered firing formations, demonstrating military precision in a criminal theater. By sunrise, reconnaissance drones captured the devastating aftermath. Burning trucks sent massive smoke columns stretching across the Sonoran horizon. Dozens of bodies scattered across blood-soaked sands. But the Angels had vanished completely, disappearing into the desert's embrace before authorities arrived. The FBI's El Paso field office eventually confirmed at least 317 confirmed fatalities attributed to the clash, with the overwhelming majority belonging to Sinaloa's Los Ninis division. Among the casualties was Victor El Pez Quintero, a mid-level lieutenant responsible for managing fentanyl logistics throughout Arizona. His execution triggered a violent internal purge throughout Mexico as rival factions accused each other of catastrophic betrayal. The Bureau officially labeled it a multi-party transnational incident under active investigation, carefully refusing to name any suspects. Yet local residents knew the truth. Farmers in Alta reported discovering fresh Harley tire marks near dried riverbeds. Residents in Lukeville swore they heard motorcycles rumbling past in the darkness, moving in silent formation with headlights completely dark. As The Intercept later confirmed through leaked documents, federal agencies were fully aware of the Angels' growing presence near the border, but deliberately chose not to intervene. The reasoning remained murky, but internal classified memos hinted that some officials quietly considered the bikers a self-regulating deterrent force against cartel trafficking operations. Law enforcement didn't maintain the Angels' silence. Their own code did that. For them, silence represents sacred duty. No boasting, no witnesses, no confessions. Ever. Yet patterns inevitably emerged. On biker forums throughout the deep web, users began posting encrypted memorial tributes. Skull patches displaying 317, the battle date inscribed beneath flaming wings, paying respect perhaps to the fallen warriors from that brutal night. But absolute silence couldn't last forever. The bodies told their own story. Hundreds of cartel operatives slaughtered in a desert battle the government adamantly refused to acknowledge publicly. And as always happens when violence collides with official denial, legends are born. To truly understand the code driving this profound silence, the blood oath binding the Angels to acts even law enforcement won't discuss openly, we must revisit the club's violent history, where every modern conflict traces its brutal roots to an older, bloodier past. When the desert burned, the battle eventually known as the Sonoran Purge began beneath a deceptive calm. From the Mexican border side, the night appeared completely ordinary, just another routine shipment moving through the desert's endless darkness. But the atmosphere carried a strange static tension, a low-frequency hum that locals insisted they could physically feel vibrating through the sand beneath their feet. This wasn't weather-related. This was war approaching. Federal sensors operated by CBP's Tucson sector detected unusual thermal signatures surrounding the Organ Pipe Cactus National Monument, where the border fence carves a jagged scar across endless desert. At 12:57 a.m., motion-activated cameras captured a column of vehicles advancing north. Running lights dimmed completely, tires deliberately dragging through sand to muffle engine noise. But the cartel convoy didn't draw initial attention. A parallel movement traveling west of them did. A smaller formation barely visible in darkness, moving in near-perfect silence except for occasional pulses of red brake lights. The Hells Angels. Satellite timestamps later verified that both convoys entered the identical square mile of desert within 4 minutes of each other. What happened next transcended reality into pure legend. According to internal DHS communication logs obtained by the Washington Post, monitoring agents initially mistook the Angels' formation for a Border Patrol tactical response team. When the first flares illuminated the night sky, one operator radioed headquarters. Multiple heat contacts detected, appears law enforcement engaging smugglers. Minutes later, concentrated gunfire erupted across the desert. From accounts painstakingly reconstructed later by Mexican state police investigators, the Sinaloa convoy was ambushed simultaneously from 2 directions, north and west, by attackers employing suppressive fire patterns and improvised explosive devices planted beneath pre-marked stone markers. The Angels' attack demonstrated perfect coordination. Military veterans instantly recognized the precision involved. This wasn't random criminal chaos. This was a legitimate military engagement, with clear strategic objectives executed flawlessly. They struck at exactly 1:14 a.m., using tracer rounds that cut through darkness like manufactured lightning. The cartel convoy's lead vehicle exploded first. A fuel transport truck hit by an improvised mortar round constructed from a repurposed M203 grenade launcher. A surviving cartel member interviewed anonymously by El Universal recalled seeing motorcycles cresting sand dunes as men wearing black tactical vests advanced methodically, shouting absolutely nothing. No battle cries. No verbal orders. Just suffocating silence punctuated by relentless gunfire. When the Angels moved forward, they moved as one organism. Pairs covering pairs, leapfrogging forward through thick smoke. Multiple witnesses reported they wore no visible identification patches, only red bandanas tied to rifle barrels. At 1:25 a.m., the cartel's rear convoy attempted retreating south. That's when Rex Menendez, commanding the Angel Strike team, allegedly ordered no survivors allowed. The following 5 minutes devolved into what a CBP insider later described to Vice as an absolute desert slaughter. Over 40 vehicles were completely destroyed or permanently disabled. Thermal imaging showed over 300 individual heat signatures go permanently cold within under an hour. By the time U.S. surveillance drones repositioned for better coverage, all visual traces of the bikers had completely vanished. Not one motorcycle remained traceable by infrared technology. How did they disappear so completely? Investigators eventually discovered an extensive network of dry riverbeds connecting directly to private ranch lands north of Arizona. Those trails, familiar only to longtime locals, led straight into Tohono O'odham Nation Reservation territory, an area so politically sensitive and geographically vast that federal agents rarely entered without official tribal escort. The Angels had selected their battlefield perfectly. At dawn, as morning sunlight revealed what darkness had concealed, smoke from burning trucks rose like massive black pillars piercing the sky. Bodies lay scattered across blood-stained sand. Weapons melted beyond recognition by intense fire. The desert reeked of burning oil, fresh blood, and spent cordite. By 7:45 a.m., Mexican military units crossed the international border to retrieve casualties, but American forces had already completely sealed the area. The official explanation released to press outlets described it as large-scale intercartel violence, but recovered shell casings told a dramatically different story. U.S.-issued NATO brass stamped from an Arizona National Guard armory batch reported stolen in 2022. Someone had access. Someone professionally trained. Someone absolutely furious. In following days, rumors exploded across the internet. On biker forums and encrypted Telegram groups, members began posting information fragments. Redacted GPS coordinates, heat map screenshots, stylized photographs of burned pickup trucks captioned simply 173 Retribution. That quote from the Polish Hall survivor echoed eerily across forums, with bikers directly comparing both events, 1974 and 2024, as connected chapters of the same sacred code. For the Angels, this wasn't about profit or territory. This was pure retribution. They'd lost brothers to fentanyl overdoses, wives to addiction, sons to street drugs laced with cartel poison. They viewed the border not as a line separating nations, but as the front line of a war they didn't start and no government would properly fight. A Department of Homeland Security leak published by ProPublica suggested the Angels had operated completely independently of any federal coordination, yet demonstrated tactical precision exceeding most professional paramilitary forces. That same report confirmed intelligence units had identified 3 Angel safe houses throughout Arizona in Tucson, Nogales, and Ajo, but none were ever raided. The reason once again was calculated silence from Washington. Behind closed doors, federal agents debated an unthinkable question. Should they confront the Angels and risk igniting a domestic insurgency, or quietly permit them to serve as an unofficial deterrent against cartel incursions? The decision reached was continued silence. Meanwhile, across the border, the Sinaloa cartel began its revenge campaign. Within 48 hours, gunmen raided a small ranch in Sonora, Mexico, executing 2 men believed to be U.S. nationals with cartel connections. Days later, a Phoenix scrapyard was deliberately torched. Its owner, rumored to maintain Angel affiliations, was found missing. Cartel message boards circulated photographs of burned motorcycles with Spanish captions reading "Para cada jefe, una muerte," for every boss, one death. But they catastrophically underestimated the Angels' resolve. According to The Guardian, within 2 weeks, 3 mid-level cartel commanders, El Gato, Pajaro, and El Moro, were discovered executed along Sonoran highways. Each corpse bore identical markings carved into the chest, a flaming skull surrounded by angel wings. This wasn't artistic expression. This was a signature claiming responsibility. Local Mexican authorities quietly admitted to journalists these deaths appeared ritualized, strongly implying involvement of a foreign organized group. But no physical evidence was ever officially released, and investigation files were permanently sealed. Inside biker culture, the Arizona battle transformed into mythology told in careful whispers at bars and motorcycle rallies, disguised as rumor but firmly rooted in documented truth. For the angels who live by the three absolutes, no talk, no surrender, no witnesses, silence functioned as the ultimate weapon. Still, evidence continued accumulating. Leaked satellite imagery showed motorcycle tire tracks leading north from the battlefield site. Fuel receipts from Yuma and Gila Bend matched the exact same time frame. Eyewitnesses described convoys of black Harleys moving in tight formation through desert darkness, headlights completely dark, engines roaring like rolling thunder approaching. Federal agents quietly traced encrypted Bitcoin transactions between confirmed Angels members and Darknet Arms suppliers, verifying, as Bellingcat later uncovered through independent investigation, that the organization had purchased over $2.1 million in weapons-grade munitions from ex-military brokers operating in Texas. What began as simple vengeance had evolved into sophisticated organization. What began as a brotherhood had transformed into a functional militia. In biker culture, loyalty supersedes law always. When questioned by reporters, one former Angel speaking under guaranteed anonymity stated, "The government doesn't protect this country's borders anymore. We just did what real men are supposed to do. Defend what belongs to us." That quote, later featured in Rolling Stone, perfectly encapsulated the new philosophy that took hold following the Sonoran Purge. Self-enforced justice delivered without apology. But justice in the Angels' world always arrives drenched in gasoline and gunpowder. By late April, more than 300 cartel operatives were officially confirmed dead, not exclusively from the initial firefight, but from systematic follow-up assassinations across Mexico's northern states. The Mexican government publicly denied any U.S. involvement whatsoever, but leaked intelligence documents told a contradictory story. In a leaked Defense Intelligence report, analysts concluded the attackers demonstrated combat discipline absolutely consistent with U.S. Special Operations training, strongly suggesting some Hells Angels veterans likely included former Marines and military contractors. That conclusion would later prove accurate when a cache of recovered weapons, customized AR-15 variants with modified serial numbers, was successfully traced back to U.S. Marine Corps surplus shipments diverted years prior through corrupt supply chains. The FBI quietly opened Operation Red Rain, an ongoing classified task force specifically designed to investigate domestic paramilitary biker activity in border zones. Yet to this very day, not one Angel has been arrested in connection with the battle. That clip, recorded half a century ago, echoes with chilling symmetry. The same adrenaline rush. The same suffocating silence after slaughter ends. Only this time, the battleground wasn't a hall in Cleveland. It was an international border, and the consequences reached far beyond anything before. In weeks that followed, satellite footage revealed temporary encampments deep in Arizona's most remote wastelands. Clusters of vehicles arranged in defensive circles with tire burn marks scorched into sand forming wing patterns. The desert had become sacred ground, a permanent monument to the Brotherhood's defiance. When journalists approached locals near Ajo and Y, they encountered locked doors and complete silence. One rancher told reporters from NBC News, "Nobody discusses that night. You didn't see anything. You didn't hear anything. You just keep your head down and mind your business." The truth buried in classified reports and burnt desert soil remains unchanged. They fought the cartels in America's name, even though America pretends it never asked them to. Aftermath of a Brotherhood's war. The desert fell silent again. But this wasn't peace returning. This was aftermath settling. When smoke finally cleared, there were no victory flags raised. No celebrations held, just widespread wreckage and unanswered questions. What had transpired in the Arizona wasteland that night was now spreading far beyond its geographic boundaries through newsrooms, intelligence channels, biker forums, and morgues on both sides of the international border. Authorities officially called it unverified cartel infighting. Reporters labeled it the Sonoran Massacre. But inside the Hells Angels, it was spoken of only once in careful whispers as the night the Brotherhood crossed the line forever. The U.S. Border Patrol maintained its institutional silence. Satellite imagery was systematically deleted. CBP drones that had captured the explosive flashes of battle suddenly experienced technical malfunctions. The agency later informed The Intercept that all video files from March 17 suffered complete technical corruption, but fragments inevitably leaked. One frame, still perfectly intact, showed a column of motorcycles fading into dawn's early light, their headlights streaking across desert landscape like ghosts retreating from approaching daylight. Those who arrived later, federal cleanup teams, forensic agents, and local sheriffs, received identical instructions. Recover what remains salvageable, then systematically erase everything else. Evidence collection was immediately followed by bulldozers. Dozens of destroyed trucks were buried in shallow sand trenches under fabricated environmental reclamation orders. And just like that, the physical dead disappeared from view. But you cannot bury a story this massive. Not in the digital information age. Satellite analysts from Bellingcat identified 2.7 miles of burned scarring along Organ Pipe's northern sector, perfectly consistent with heavy vehicular explosions and sustained combat. Reuters officially cited